DEJI360, providing clarity to issues. All right, welcome back. Now, the number of persons testing positive for COVID-19 in Nigeria has been on a steady rise in recent weeks. In spite of this, the government has ruled out another lockdown and says schools across the country could resume January the 18th as planned. According now to the World Bank, 1.6 billion students were out of school during the first peak of the pandemic in April 2020, and almost 700 million remained out of school as 2021 actually drew close. Now, that gives you a perspective of what it means to shut schools now down because of the pandemic. Now, while the government insists that it is not going back on its plan on school resumption, the Academic Staff Union of Universities in Nigeria has said institutions are not ready. I'm talking about universities now, that they're not ready for safe reopening. The union says, given the situation of public universities, adequate measures needed to curtail the spread of the virus are yet to be put in place by the government. Take a listen now to the ASUU chairman, University of Lagos branch, explain the position of the union.
With the upsurge in the second wave of the coronavirus, it is the conviction of our union that without putting in place necessary infrastructure, implementing the non-pharmaceutical aspect of the COVID-19 protocol, it will be suicidal to bring students back to campus. Particularly because not only are the classrooms overstretched, the hostels are overcrowded. And you can imagine if only one person, is infected with the virus, you can only imagine the rate of transmission, on campus or campuses. So what our union is saying is, if universities must be opened, university administrators must be prepared to put in the necessary infrastructure to enable resumption. Let's take other sectors of the society, for example. The aviation sector. Immediately after the lockdown and flights were to start operation, you saw what was done at the airports. A lot of redesigning, a lot of reorganization with requisite funding from government. So I ask the question, why can't same be done for universities?
Well, the position of ASUU is quite understandable there, especially given the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic we're experiencing in the country at the moment. Infection rate has actually gone up. The death rate too has actually gone up. More people are dying from this second wave than we had in the first wave. And some people have actually argued that if there was any time at all to declare a lockdown, it would have been now and not the first lockdown we had. And you can picture what the situation is with our universities, especially the public universities, where classrooms are jam-packed. Just imagine this course now that they refer to as general courses, that's the JS courses. Imagine where students are packed into a hall, and just picture that kind of situation. Then you'd begin to understand why these lecturers are against the reopening of schools for now, and also consider the fact that, take for instance the University of Lagos, where about 2 or 3 professors have died from this virus. Then you can understand the position of the lecturer. But then the alternative can actually not be to keep schools closed forever. It's a good thing that the University of Lagos has decided that learning will go online for now. So the University of Lagos is reopening school on the 25th of this month, and that learning, of course, will begin online at least until the COVID situation, or until all the COVID protocols are put in place. We're waiting to see what other public universities are going to do. We've heard from top people, top medical experts who are also academics. They've actually come out to say it's actually not advisable to reopen schools at this time. I'm talking about universities now. But again, the alternative cannot be to keep schools closed forever. But if this whole idea of online learning, that's virtual learning now, could be explored further, then that would be good. We know there are challenges with virtual learning, but then it's better than no learning at all. But to say that ASUU hasn't got a point, I think that would not be correct. Their fears are quite understandable, and we'll wait and see what the government does. But for now, the government says schools will reopen on the 18th of January. Of course, that's from the federal government. The state governments too will have to make up their mind. It's not as if the state governments now are bound by that date now, because I know some states have said that they're not reopening until probably the 25th and all of that. So we'll wait and see what happens. But apart from reopening of schools, Nigeria is also on its toes again in the race for a homegrown solution. Now, recently, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo met with some professors and scientists investigating how the drug known as Ivermectin, which has been used in the treatment of river blindness in Nigeria, can be repurposed to treat COVID-19. A report on the usefulness of the drug has now been submitted to the World Health Organization. We can only wait and see what the outcome of this will be. Hopefully, this may be the medical breakthrough the continent has been waiting for, and it might just be the homegrown solution now that we've actually been harping on for a very long time, right from the very first day this pandemic broke. But joining me now to speak more on this is Dr. Alero Ann Roberts. She is the second vice chairman of the Association of Public Health Physicians of Nigeria, Lagos State Branch. Doc, thanks very much for joining us on the program. Let me begin with this quest for a local solution. That's a local vaccine. Now, positive move, no doubt, but is this something that probably should have come a lot earlier?
To be honest with you, it should have been done a lot earlier than this. I believe that Nigeria as a country has had the capacity, and in fact, we used to have some elemental vaccine production in the very early days. I remember when I was in the University of Lagos, and there was a site where we used to produce the yellow fever vaccine at the beginning of the University of Lagos Road in Yaba. So I believe that we, as a country, we ought to have been engaged in this a lot earlier. And we need to certainly do something about it now.
Now, the meeting between the Vice President, Nigerian professors and scientists, which is part of efforts to develop a homegrown solution and also investigate now the effectiveness of Ivermectin on COVID-19 treatment. What's your take on this? Do you think we're close to a homegrown solution here?
To be honest with you, it's something that a lot of us have been using since March for the treatment of we didn't have what we call proven evidence, but we were certainly using empirical evidence that we had, you know, to manage patients in the beginning. But then don't forget that this was a time when we really knew very little about anything, and we were literally throwing everything at the disease to see what worked. And ivermectin, we had read quite a few reports coming from colleagues in India, in other places where ivermectin is widely used as an antiparasitic drug, and it was believed that it had some effect. However, as time has gone on, we've been able to now look at, there have been a lot of what we call systematic reviews, looking at a lot of empirical evidence, which has now made it clinical evidence that ivermectin certainly does have a good effect. A, as a prophylaxis, B, used early in the disease in mitigating the clinical effects of the disease. We are also conducting, I mean, obviously, the Vice President met with quite a few researchers on this, and that is ongoing. But certainly it is something that we have added to our arsenal of pharmaceutical products that we are using against COVID-19 in Nigeria.
Now, still talking about the vaccine and treatment, Nigeria is expecting 100,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine by the end of January. But before its arrival, an average Nigerian will tell you they are not willing to take the vaccine. They're just scared. So what do you make of this? Because really, it's about convincing people to get the vaccine. It cannot be forcefully administered.
Let me be very elitist about this. 100,000 vaccines, I can give you a list of people who are ready to take the vaccine tomorrow. and that list exceeds 100,000 doses. It's more like 200,000 doses. So anybody who doesn't want to take the vaccine, please move out of the way. Those of us that need and want the vaccine, we're ready. We're ready because this vaccine is a game changer. We know that. We know that. And the way we are seeing COVID-19 spread now amongst the middle class, those who are of value to the society and to the economy, we know we need that vaccine. Our frontline workers are getting infected. Not only are they tired, they are getting infected, and we cannot afford to lose the few remaining frontline workers that we have left in the country. So those who don't want to take the vaccine, no problem. I don't want to convince anybody to take the vaccine. 100,000 doses is simply not enough for the number of people that want and need the vaccine right now. Harsh realities, I know.
Now, away from the vaccine to the issue of school resumption, the Minister of Education has said, well, January 18th, schools across the country should resume. How safe is it to get schools open at this time, especially when we have this second wave that appears to be deadlier than the first one and infection rates is going up?
To be honest with you, I'm glad I wasn't in the position to have to make this decision, but I think it is a very wise call. The number of children, and let me emphasize the word children, who are out of school and therefore more exposed to far more dangerous situations is actually quite alarming. And this is the reason why we need to get the schools opened and as fast as possible. The second thing I have to say is that the latest wave was certainly not because of schools. Schools have actually regulated environment. So once you put in a protocol of hand washing before you enter, temperature checks, constant sanitization, cleaning, and whatnot, schools are the best place for such regulated mechanisms to work. So I'm actually inclined to agree that schools should open with all the regulatory protocols. To be honest with you, and we've had this discussion among public health physicians, we're going backwards, we're going forwards. The protocols that are in place by government are actually very robust. Let's be frank. What is lacking is the individual commitment to a collective responsibility towards stopping the spread of this virus. If we would only obey simple public health initiatives, really we will get this thing over and done with. There is so much evidence to show that simply keeping your distance, wearing a mask, hand washing, sanitization, all of which will be done in a regulated environment like a school, will go a long way to reducing the transmission of this virus. So I'm in agreement with schools reopening.
But if it happens that the government says it has to shut schools again due to surging cases, what would be the possible impact of closing schools again?
I'm not sure, because the impact of having schools shut is actually immense. People have forgotten that some of our major frontline workers are actually primary school teachers who have not been at work for a very long time, and they are critical to making sure that we get a population that can even understand the intricacies of disease causation, prevention, and transmission. Sometimes trying to give this risk communication to people who are not educated is so difficult that I've learned to really, really appreciate the work of nursery school and primary school teachers. So I don't think we really have an option. The way we are in our trajectory of national development, we really don't have an option of keeping schools closed any longer. We're losing a whole generation of Nigerians again. Those who have access to remote learning are still the same ones who can keep themselves safe. What about the rest of the population? How do you get children who are in public schools, in public primary schools, to get access to remote learning? Where do they get the devices? Where do they even get simple things like electricity? So I don't think we really have an option to keep the schools closed any longer. We really do need to get back to in-person education, at least get the children out of compromising situations where they are used, exploited sexually and commercially.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Alero Ann Roberts, the second Vice Chairman of the Association of Public Health Physicians of Nigeria, Lagos State Branch. Thank you very much for speaking to us, madam. Well, that's how much we can take on the program. We thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.